Hello, I am Commie Fritz the Great and I bring you a Let's Play video from the depths of the internet. Comrades, this is Kerbal's space program, which is one of the greatest games known to mankind. It's being developed by a company called Squad in Mexico, and it's in version 0.22 currently. Version 0.23 is actually out at the moment, but I haven't had a chance to update. I've just set up a new save, so let's dive straight in and not shilly-shally any longer. If we just load this up, and hope it doesn't crash as well. Actually, that's a fair point. So here is the main interface. This is the spaceport. In the middle is the vehicle assembly building, which is predominantly for rockets. You build your rockets and you can take them off to the launch pad where you launch them, obviously. The tracking station I find is a pretty cool feature because you can terminate your flights and pick up where you left off on saved flights. Research and development facility. Now this is currently closed in the sandbox mode, which we're playing now, but version 0.22 actually saw the release of career mode, in which you start with a certain number of parts and you work your way up through the ranks, unlocking new parts and sort of working your way through to different destinations around the solar system. Is the astronaut complex, where you hire or fire your astronauts. You can see which ones have died and which ones are still alive and after your failed launches. Over here we have the space plane hangar. You can also build space planes now, and of course there's a runway, which is the equivalent of the launch pad, where you launch them and sort of cross your fingers and hope they take off rather than ditch straight into the sea. Now I've already built a rocket, so we can dive straight in and go for a quick test flight. This, comrades, is the Trotsky 2 orbital vehicle. This is my first rocket in this game, in this save actually, I should be honest, but it's a pretty simple construction. Command pod up top, command propellant, our orbital maneuvering stage, and our boost stage, which should take us out of the atmosphere. I should explain the flag in the background. I chose that particular pattern of flag because it mirrored the communist flag. Yeah, true story. If we save that, and we can go ahead and launch the mighty Trotsky 2. So here we are at the launch pad. As you can see, we have our pilot, Jebediah Kerman. He is a very loyal comrade of the state. He is the best astronaut in history, and he should also be the first to orbit this great planet, and indeed fly over this magnificent country. Our flag proudly marks the beginning of the launch, as we turn on the stability augmentation system with the T button, and then throttle up with shift, and press the space bar to let loose the dogs of war. And immediately we're going up like a rocket. Yeah, I couldn't think of any more puns. Well, not puns, but similes. Now the idea is to get to at least 200 meters per second as you cross the 10-kilometer mark. Now we're going a hell of a lot faster than that due to the solid rocket boosters pushing us up into the air, so expect that speed to be short-lived. There they go, the parachutes on the solid rocket boosters will deploy, guide them safely down to Earth. We can probably afford to throttle up now to regain some of that lost momentum. We're at 10 kilometers exactly. We can start tilting over into our gravity turn in order to achieve the correct amount of lateral velocity and height in order to get into orbit. We can probably throttle down a little bit as well. I should explain this rather interesting map view here. The AP on our trajectory, which is currently 24,000, and it's going to take us 38 seconds to get to that point. The AP stands for apoapsis, as you can probably see, and there is our rocket currently sort of soaring towards that at unimaginable speed. So the idea is to have also a periapsis, which is the closest point to the planet in your orbit, and if you have both, and periapsis is above at least 70,000, then you are in a safe orbit. It's quite simple, really. I mean, the developers thought it would put off quite a lot of gamers who like this type of genre, but it's had quite the opposite reaction, in fact. Going to have to start tilting over a lot more, and you can see that we are in fact going to go to space. And the stage is about to run out. Now we can turn on the RCS, or the reaction control system, which essentially allows us to make fine orbital maneuvers like this one. So I'm flipping around here using the monopropellant in this tank here. That is especially useful for docking or precision movement in space. But we don't need to worry about docking for now. All we have to do is get into orbit. And it's 1 minute and 5 seconds until we reach our apoapsis before we can start our burn. But I guess we can actually start burning about 30 seconds beforehand. So comma and dot keys control the time warp. So obviously if you don't want to be playing the game in real time, some of the locations are pretty far away, distance wise obviously. The maximum you can time warp up to is 100,000, which still isn't fast enough if you ask me. We're expanding our arc, and hopefully we have enough momentum and speed to slingshot our way all the way around Kerbal. I must apologise, by the way, if I seem a bit sort of choked up or ill, which is because I am ill. I have the bubonic plague, as it were. I think it's this ghastly weather, but yeah, everything's flooded. There's just water everywhere, but not a drop to drink, as it were, again. Anyway, we're just going to continue with our burn. And I believe we have completely and utterly screwed this up. I have got a bit of leeway being so high up. I did go up higher than I anticipated I would. I'm hoping, of course, now that my sprite is going to be nose-clearingly pungent in order for me to continue doing my recording unhindered. And of course, as you can probably tell, it hasn't helped at all. Nonetheless, Comrade Jebediah becomes the first Kerbonaut in orbit. Now, let's see. Oh, we should probably burn a bit more, actually, because we're just below the atmosphere. 70. Okay, if we time warp around to our apoapsis, which is the furthest point in our orbit, as I've said before, we can then do a little burn and even things out a bit. As you can see, our orbit isn't the most eccentric thing in the world. Is eccentric the right word? I don't quite know. No matter. we shall do a little burn again. Just line it up with our prograde vector, which is the circle without the hole in it. Sorry, circle without the cross in it. Hole. Silly. And the retrograde vector, as you'll see, is the circle with the 3 points and the cross through it. So retrograde is away from your direction of travel. Prograde, as you can probably guess now, is in the direction of travel. And the brown bit of the central console, the nav ball, is pointing towards the Earth, and our capsule is pointing this way. So if we pan the camera around, there is Kerbal. And obviously it's in exactly the opposite direction, this way. And there is the legendary Kerbal cradle, which was interesting. Yes, it was interesting. I've always wondered what's in the middle of that island. I don't think there is actually anything. Although speaking of Easter egg type things, I believe there's a secret space center on the same continent, actually. Where is it? I think it's in this ring of mountains here. Next to that rather large pointy strip of raised land near the coast, just north of the Kerbal cradle. But I guess we'll have to check that out someday. I'll get hold of the coordinates and we'll have a little butcher's, the secret space center. Anyway, we are 29 minutes and 17 seconds into our space flight. Jebediah Kerbal is very happy. Comrade Jebediah is beside himself with joy. I think the next step then is, if I can find it, the moon, which is, as you can probably tell, a lot further out than where we currently are now. But we'll get there. I think sending one guy into orbit isn't the most challenging feat, if we're honest, but 3 men to the moon, that is something to be proud of, I think. As we slowly rotate out of control in our almost 2.5 kilometers per second orbit, actually, we are going pretty quickly, skimming the atmosphere. And, ooh, there was one thing I'd like to show you, and that was it? There we are. If we click this button here, I can get Comrade Jebediah out of his cockpit. And he also has a jetpack. And that is awesome. It has lights too. Pose for the camera, Comrade Jebediah. You are the savior of your nation. Etc. Oh god, we should probably get back to the spaceship, if we're honest. Trick is to sort of line it up on all of the axes until you slow down. No, get down, get down, get up, get down. Left a bit, right a bit, back a bit, slowly, slowly, up a bit, down a bit. And grab. We are back on board. I have to say, it's pretty pokey in here. I mean, Kerbals aren't exactly big, but this is going a bit far, I think. I'll talk you through the dials. The dial on the bottom right of to the bottom right of the nav ball is the radar altitude, because this, the altimeter up at the top of the screen, isn't exactly accurate. That's just sea level, so you don't quite know how high you really are when you're landing on places like terrain, for example, or a mountain. Sorry. And the one in the top right, next to onto the left of the throttle lever, which is currently in its lowest setting, I've turned it off, is the vertical speed indicator, which currently is reading nothing. I guess that's because we're not going up or down, are we? SAS is on. You can see that they're on and off with the RCS and the SAS. Glow lamps there. For the one-man pod, that's about it, really. And there's your bearing controls underneath the nav ball. So you can see I'm pointing at 270 degrees, which is retrograde, exactly. 90 degrees, which is prograde. And 180 degrees, pointing directly at Kerbal. And obviously 360. Because I think Comrade Jebediah's time and space must come to an end. Because we have quite a bit of fuel left in our fuel tanks, but where are we going to go with it? We can't go to the moon. I guess we're going to have to land. Actually, the technical term is splashdown, but who cares? Oh no, I didn't want to do that actually. If we walk around a bit more here, we can aim a little towards the Kerbal cradle that I pointed out earlier. And if we just line ourselves up with a marker, eventually ignite the engines again. Comrade Jebediah, you are coming home. I should probably burn a little more prograde because I don't want to hit the atmosphere too soon and land on the continent. There we are. Actually, it's a bit much. And I guess we should probably also point to retrograde because the heat shield is on the back of the command pod, obviously. It would be silly not to go down that way. Very unconventional. We can probably speed up time while we're at it. Let's see, we've now hit the atmosphere full on. And we're going down at quite a rate. We're speeding up, in fact. But are we going to make it to the coast? That's the question. I do not believe that we are, if we're honest. Because we are just passing over that big lake, as you can see on the left there. Or is that the sea? Yeah, that is the sea, sorry. Lake. Oh, re-entry. Oh god. Who doesn't like a good fireball? Oh, we're in 4 times speed, and we're in 4 times speed. I think we are going to land in Z, if we're honest. But that's alright, because that's how this pod was designed. Wasn't designed for landing on terrain. But Comrade Jebediah has come back from a successful spaceflight. He shall forever be remembered in the history books of this great nation. Now, we're coming down at a pretty graceful arc. And I think we are going to land on the land. Which is something that this command pod isn't really designed to do. So I'm not going to count my chickens before they hatch on this one. Hold on to your spleen, Jebediah. We're coming in hot. "99 meters per second. We're just above a kilometer up. Is the parachute going to deploy in time, however? That is the question. And yes, it did. Yes. One thing I do like about this parachute is its colour scheme. It's very sort of cool and retro. I like that parachute. And yes, that is definitely normal. "6 meters per second doesn't match up with 6.2 on my nav ball. That doesn't matter. And if we consult the radar, we are less than 100 meters off the ground. "6.1 meters per second. The ground is right there. And there we have it, the end of the mission after 59 minutes and 38 seconds. Almost an hour, actually. Comrade Jebediah has become the first Kerbal to orbit and come back safely from space. And now, as he walks, he climbs out and walks triumphantly from his spacecraft. To conclude the first episode of this Let's Play. So, and yeah, he definitely isn't inside the grass. Please join me next time for episode 2, where we attempt to shoot for the moon. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Commie Fruits the Great, and I will see you next time.